Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 85. Buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades, y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast, episodio número 85. Welcome. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and this is the Karey Carbaugh podcast, where we help people with feelings of improved self-esteem and self-worth. And I do think tonight's podcast topic will be very beneficial. I hope you'll agree with me when I'm finished with this. If you would, you know the drill. Smash that like button, like if you do, and leave me a comment down below to let me know whether you're watching this live or on the replay and where you're tuning in from. It's always nice for me to see where these podcasts are reaching. So smash that like button, drop me a comment, let me know with the word live or replay or simply an L or an R to let me know if you're catching this live or watching the replay. I appreciate both. It's always nice to see people join me live, but the reality is most people catch this on the replay, and that's important as well. But do let me know as well where you're tuning in from. This podcast is reaching some very interesting places, and it's always fun for me to see where we're reaching. So with that, I will dive into tonight's podcast. As you can see, I've titled this podcast, "The Future is Uncertain, but Destiny is Not." And I'll explain what I mean by that here in a moment. Another way that I might have titled this, I was thinking after I put out the announcement of this, I could have said, "The path is uncertain, the destination is not." Or even if the destination is certain, the path to get there may be uncertain. And if you have ever experienced this, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. Have you ever gone on a trip and maybe things didn't go quite the way you expected? Me too. If you have, drop the word relate in the comments and let me know that. Perhaps you were on a road trip and maybe your destination was, let's just say for example, if you're a parent or grandparent, maybe you were taking your children or grandchildren to Disneyland or Disney World, and maybe you get part way and your car breaks down, or you encounter some difficulties, maybe road closures, maybe roadblocks. But if you keep your eyes on that destination, if you stay focused on the fact that the goal is to get to Disneyland or Disney World, you can overcome these obstacles. I have a friend who recently retired, and they were planning a camping trip. They were going to go see some family on the West Coast, loop back around and come back down through Yellowstone and back into Colorado. It was about a month-long trip, and they got about, a couple hours away, and their car broke down, just completely shut down. Turned out they ended up needing a new engine, and their path certainly was uncertain. They didn't plan that in the beginning. They ended up returning back home and waiting for their engine to be rebuilt or get a new engine. But nevertheless, their destination, although they thought the destination was to go visit family in, I don't remember if it was Oregon or Washington, come back down through Yellowstone, and return back to Colorado. Their ultimate destination was really to do some camping and to get away in retirement. They kept their eyes on that destination. It wasn't what they thought it was initially, but they kept their eyes on that destination, and although delayed, they eventually took parts of that camping trip and were able to enjoy time out and about away from home and begin to enjoy their retirement. They have some other trips planned. They may do other parts of that trip next year or at another time, but their ultimate destination remained the same. The destination of retiring, of enjoying time together with each other, and some respite or relaxation away from home. As many of you know, if you've been watching these podcasts for any length of time at all, I am a Christian, and while I don't force that belief on anyone, I also don't hide it. And so I'm going to use an example tonight to illustrate this point that comes from the Bible. I hope you'll take from this the important point, not necessarily the religious view associated with that. Although if you're a believer, I think it'll have even more impact on you. Let's take a look at the Israelites in the second book of the Bible, the book of Exodus. The mere name of this book, Exodus, means exit or journey or travel. The Israelites had been asking God for years to get them out of Egypt. They'd been slaves. They'd been enslaved in Egypt for generations, and they wanted out of Egypt. And God got them out of Egypt, and he told them that he would bring them to a promised land, and that they just needed to trust him. I did some research because it wasn't that far of a distance that they traveled. It took them 40 years to get there, and they were on foot. They were walking around in the desert. I did a bit of research, and researchers, biblical scholars, say that this destination from Egypt to the Promised Land was initially planned to only be 40 days. Well, why did it take 40 years? Well, let's take a look. And I'm not going to read the entire story. I'm going to definitely summarize and paraphrase. You can read the story for yourself, once again in the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible. But for 40 years, the Israelites wandered in the desert. And in fact, none of the leaders that started the journey actually saw the Promised Land. I should rephrase that. They saw it, but none of them were allowed to enter it. All of the initial leaders died before they entered the Promised Land. Why, you might ask? Well, that's an interesting thing to look at. Many of them didn't follow the instructions given by God. Moses, who was the initial leader of the pack, so to speak, made a few mistakes, although he followed mostly what God had asked him to do. He led the people. He got frustrated with the people along the way. They kept demanding, why are you bringing us through the desert? And in fact, at one point they even said, we want to go back to Egypt. It's too rough out here. This isn't what we expected at all. And in a moment of desperation, Moses, trying to get water for the people in the middle of the desert where they didn't have water, God told him to speak to a rock and it would pour out water for him. But in a moment of desperation, he struck that rock. Not once, but twice. And indeed, water poured out of the rock, but because Moses didn't follow the commands and the directions he was given, his ultimate consequence or punishment for that action was that he was not allowed to enter the promised land with his people. He was not allowed to lead his people into the promised land. Let's take a look at the people and their reaction. Although they'd been praying for generations to be led out of Egypt, as soon as God showed a way and he parted the sea and allowed the people to walk across on dry land what had been a sea or a river. Most accounts of it describe it as a sea, as an ocean. Immediately after God's people crossed, he unparted that river, if you will, or that sea, and drowned the enemies of the Israelites. That was certainly a display of his protection and his will for them, that he wanted to lead them out of Egypt. He was giving them what they asked for. But coming back to our topic today, their destination or their destiny of getting to the promised land was certain, and they eventually made it there. But the future to get there, the path to get there, was uncertain, and they faced trials. They faced difficulties, lack of food, lack of water. God provided them food. He provided manna that just poured out from heaven. And as long as they followed his commandments, his orders for it, and ate what they needed each day, and didn't try to hoard it, didn't try and save it, they would receive more manna the next day. If they tried to save it or hoard it, it would turn moldy, it would turn infested with pests. I don't remember all the descriptions that the Bible talks about, but as long as they stayed with the will of God, things went according to plan. But as soon as the people tried to do it their own way, things came up to sort of bring them back in line, if you will. And it's important to look at the reaction of the people at one point in the journey. Well, I'm sure it happened more than once, but there's one point in particular, and it's talked about a couple of times, that the people started saying, hey, this is not what we signed up for. We want to go back to Egypt. At least we know what we're dealing with there. It's pretty bad, and it really stinks, it really sucks, but at least we know what we're dealing with. Out here, we don't know what to expect. It's uncertain. The future is uncertain. Have you ever experienced that in your own life, where the future is uncertain and you just want to go back to the way things used to be? God had brought the people out of Egypt, but now he needed to get Egypt out of the people. And in order to do that, it was necessary for them to struggle through some hardship and to cause them to rely more heavily on God the ultimate leader of their journey. And the person who was, or the spirit being that was ultimately in charge of their final destination. Once they relied on him, and those people who did rely on him were allowed to enter the promised land. Let's take a look at that in our own life, in a story that I'll share with you. As some of you know that I've known personally outside of these podcasts, I used to work for a large company called IBM. I was laid off from IBM in 2002. It's hard to believe that that was 24 years ago. I won't say I was unhappy. I basically liked IBM. I was frustrated. I was working a lot of overtime. There were times when I said, I just need to get out of here because this is killing me. Working all this overtime, all the stress, and so forth. But when I was laid off, all I could do was compare everything back to IBM because that's all I had known. I'd worked there since I graduated from high school, from college rather. I had worked at IBM since I graduated from college, and that was all I knew. And so, even though it may not have been great, it was certain. And I kept gravitating back to that certainty. Well, that made it very difficult to find a new job, to land a new job, and to fit into a new environment or a new culture. I tried for a while doing some consulting on my own, helping to develop websites, helping to make websites more accessible for people with vision impairments. For those of you who've watched this for any period of time, you know that I am visually impaired. And I started trying to make websites more accessible for people with vision impairment. But that was uncertain. And that was not what I'd known at all. And so even when I finally did land a job 5 years later, thankfully I didn't wander in the desert for 40 years like the Israelites did. Even once I landed that job and started working at the community college where I work today, I would compare things back to IBM. Well, we used to do things like this back at IBM. It took me a while to, I won't say realize, because I knew I wasn't at IBM, but it took me a while to wrap my brain around the fact that not everyone does things the way that IBM did. And I was now in a new culture and had to adapt to that new culture. My destination of finding a new job was certain all along. But my path to get there was uncertain. And I had to get IBM out of me before I could assimilate myself into the Front Range Community College culture. Perhaps you can relate to that. Have you ever moved from one job to another? Maybe one place of living, perhaps. Maybe you've lived in one place and moved to another. I've also done that when I moved from here to New York when I first started with IBM. I kept comparing New York to Colorado. Very, very different places. And I never really fully adjusted to living in New York. I ended up moving back to Colorado. And for those 3 years that I was in New York, there were many things I enjoyed, many people, many friends that I'm still in touch with, at least some friends that I'm still in touch with from New York that are very close and very dear friends. A few of them occasionally follow this podcast. But without fully getting Colorado out of me, which I never did, it was not possible to become a New Yorker. And so that's the second part of this message tonight, is that while the path may be uncertain, the destiny is not. And alongside that, if we are not willing to adapt and adjust, it makes it much more difficult to get to that destination. We'll talk about change and whether it's possible for someone to really change in the future. That's a future topic that I have planned. I'm not sure if that'll be next week or very soon. And also we'll talk about motivators. What can motivate us to change? My plan is to make those two separate topics. And again, I don't know which one we'll cover first, but I plan to cover both of those in the near future. So I hope you've gotten value from this tonight. If you have, drop the word value or a V in the comments. And once again, let me know if you caught this live or on the replay with the word live or replay, or an L or an R in the comments. And I hope you've gotten value from this tonight. With that, I think that's all I had planned for this session. Thank you so much for joining me. I don't see any comments. I can't tell for sure if anybody's caught this on the live. Hopefully a few people have watched this live. I will respond to you after the broadcast, or if you catch this on the replay and leave me comments, I'll let you know that. I'll reply to those. But please smash that like button if you do. If you do. Leave me comments down below. That helps to show this to more people if you've gotten value from this. Thank you so much. As always, I can't believe we're on 85 podcasts now that are down and out. And I so sincerely appreciate the support of all of you that have been with me, whether from the beginning or whether you're joining us more newly on this podcast. Thank you, thank you. Have a blessed evening. Be a blessing to those you come in contact with this week, and do something positive for even just one person that you encounter. And also let me know if you'd like to be added to my email list. Drop that word email in the comments and I'll reach out to you to get your email address and get you added to my list for notifications on these podcasts and some other events coming up. I'd love to add you to my list if that's something you'd like. And I will keep your email private. I won't share that publicly. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. Be a blessing to those you come in contact with this week. Thanks for watching. Good night for now.